Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about what makes a child act out with aggressive behavior. And we're going to share one simple action that can change everything.
Get over here! Because I said so! Why do I have to keep repeating myself? Mom or Dad, do you ever feel like a broken record? You're listening to Learn to Speak Kid podcast on iTunes with Bonnie and Thomas Liotta, positively transforming families one out-of-control child at a time.
Eleanor Roosevelt once said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." Did you know that 54% of our kids are now being diagnosed with some sort of behavior or mental health disorder, like ADHD, Oppositional Defiant Disorder, anxiety, and depression, and being medicated as the only solution? In fact, more than 1 million of these children are under the age of 4 years old, a lot of them between the ages of 1 and 2. Not to mention that school gun shootings have increased more than 300% just in the last decade. Now, we can blame this on guns, and we can work on gun laws, and we can work on being reactive, or we can look for the cause of the problem, and we can bring solutions. I'm, of course, Bonnie Liotta, and I'm sitting here with Thomas Liotta. And Tom, didn't you used to have a lot of aggressive children come to your martial arts school back in the day?
Absolutely. Boy, I could tell you a few stories. These kids, maybe from day one, were just the nicest, kindest kids. But when they came to me, or when we had a chance to start training with them, wow, short-tempered, hot-headed, quick to judge, a lot of physical communication with a lot of verbal abuse. And that was the starting point for many kids.
Genesis chapter 1, verse 27 says that we were all created in the image of our Creator. Male and female, He created them. It doesn't say that, God created some that are just in His image and some that are born with mental health disorders, right? Something to be said about that. Now, I want you to picture a tame animal, any type of tame animal. You could have a tame dog. And then I want you to picture backing that tame animal up into a corner. What do you think that animal is going to do if it feels cornered, if it feels like it has no control over what's happening, if it feels threatened in any way? What happens?
Well, we're going to do what every other animal will do. We will actually use our primal instinct of self-preservation or self-perseverance to live. We will bite, kick, scratch, claw, whatever it is, even if we were drowning. Many of us would find ourselves on video watching us actually take our best friend at heart and climb all over them just so we can keep our head above the water. But here's more of an important question to maybe think and ask and answer for ourselves is, what's the message that's really being said here? And can I be the only one that sees that there might have been something we should have done or could have done way before we got here?
Now, last summer, my kids were asking me to watch 13 Reasons Why. And they were telling me that the show is basically about a girl who committed suicide, and then the tapes that she left behind for her friends sharing the 13 reasons why. And I've always known in my heart that this was why teenagers are committing suicide at, it's the number one cause of death for teenagers worldwide. And I knew this intuitively, but then when she said it on her tapes in the show, it just validated. She said that committing suicide was the one way that she could find purpose in her life. And that actually just made the hair on my arms all stand up. She was looking for purpose in her life. These children that are acting out in aggression and biting and kicking and screaming and then walking into schools later on in their life with a gun, these are unhappy children. These are children that lack a major sense of confidence, direction, life skills, and the biggest one of all is purpose. Now, we can get lost in life purpose. Of course, my child isn't going to know their life purpose until they become an adult. Well, maybe that is so. People find their life purpose through personal experiences that they have. But what is the purpose for getting up in the morning, getting dressed, matching clothes, listening to one's direction, going to school, sitting in a classroom, passing with A's, picking up toys, doing chores, and all of this other stuff? What is the purpose behind that?
You know, over the years of working with so many of these kids, you start to see some patterns. And here's a few patterns that we've actually been able to recognize when it does come to either purpose or maybe even a lack of purpose in our youth. You see, the situation is there's 3 different strikes that all parents will make, either knowingly or unknowingly. But we find ourselves in one of the 3, which is called dictation, which is mean we have a good heart. We're telling them what to do. All right, it's time to go to school. Let's get our shoes on, get that jacket going, get that seatbelt on. We got to go, go, go. And you can say it in the nicest of voices, but telling somebody what to do has a 50-50 chance that it's going to match the child's spirit or will. If they have a will to go to school, it's going to sound like motivation. Hey, my mom is cheering me on because I have a goal to get to school, and boy, am I passionate about it. But if you're being told to go to school and it's really not on your top 10, it's going to sound like nagging and dragging. And you wonder why there's so much resistance. So they end up just going under the premise of, well, at least I won't have to hear her yelling at me anymore. It's in a negative vibration. And that right there, 9 times out of 10, is what feeds this lack of purpose, because we're really not hearing the message from our kids. And 2, we don't even know why we're having them do a lot of these things other than just telling them what to do.
From the time our babies are learning to crawl and get into our makeup, we're telling them, no, we don't do that. Stop it. Be quiet. Sit down. We dictate. And then we overcompensate. Oh, there's my little 18-month-old trying to get up on the couch. Oh, he's struggling. Let me just come over there and lift him up on the couch because we think we're helping and we want our kids to be happy. But here's the truth. And you know, nature is a great teacher for us. And you know that if you help a chicken hatch out of its egg, that the chicken dies. It actually needs that process of hatching in order to develop strength and move, you know, get the fluids flowing and give that chick the confidence to actually live life. Did you know that if a butterfly is struggling to get out of a cocoon and you think you're helping and you come over with a pair of scissors and you help that butterfly out of the cocoon, that the butterfly is crippled for the rest of its life? Now, it's not your fault, and it wasn't my fault when I was doing this as a mom just a few years ago. In fact, Thomas and I just released a brand new bestseller on Amazon's Kindle called Raising Healthy, Happy, Cooperative Kids. And it is the direct path to mental illness. I write in the first chapter, an imperative message from our kids, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. And before we end today's show, I will give you the number one action that can begin changing everything with your aggressive child. But the one thing before I pass it to Tom, because he's seen this, he's worked with thousands of kids in his martial arts school back in the 90s and early 2000s. But when we do something for our child that we know they can do for themselves, and maybe they temper tantrum or they whine and we come in and we do it for them. But every time we give in to that whine, number one, we're teaching them that's how to get what they want. And number two, we're telling their subconscious mind that we don't think they're good enough to do it on their own, and that's why we have to come in and take over. Isn't that true, Tom?
Well, that's absolutely spot right on, Bonnie. You know, earlier when we talked about the 3 strikes that a lot of our parents are doing, and what we're doing is we're bringing up some awareness of maybe the history of how did we get here with our kids. And see, when we go through a process with you step by step, you're going to find out that we dictate, we bribe, and we definitely overcompensate. And it's these 3 strikes that are a silent killer to the family/kids. We don't even know that we don't even know. Did you know that a frog can be in water and over a very slow duration of time you can turn the water up 1 degree to the point where the water can actually boil and the frog would die and the frog would never know to jump out? But if he hopped into the water that was actually really hot, he'd immediately hop back out. So part of the history, whether you believe it or not, see it or not, it's actually true that we created the scenario. That's what gives us hope to where here we are, gun shootings, kids acting out. Are we really hearing the message? Because there's hope on how to shift it. If we can take responsibility that we dictated and we bribed and we overcompensated, then that's the exciting part, because the hope is we can start to do the opposite of being able to do the opposite of dictating, which is the guiding. And the bribing is actually seeing what they find is impressive or what is part of their dream versus, well, this is the family tradition, so you have to follow these steps. And overcompensating, letting the children struggle. Do you remember way back when we were just taking their very first steps? I've always asked every parent and said, go back when you can remember that time. And did you ever give the child a time limit and said, well, I guess I'm just going to throw in the towel here because he's just not picking this up fast enough. I guess he'll just be a crawler for the rest of his life. And not one parent would ever have thought that. But somewhere along the line with the next life skill to teach and the next life skill to teach, that got eroded away. And we overcompensated. It's faster to just do it rather than teach it. And that's part of the history of how we got here. This is the hope of what we can do to change it. And the last thing, before I hand it back to Bonnie, is somebody's got to do the work. This is the healing process. Somebody's got to do the work. And if it was easy to do, we would have all done it. But it's not, and that's what got missed.
So as I was saying a few minutes ago, it's not your fault. For 85 years, we have been taught as parents to cater to our children's every whim and then use something called positive discipline like naughty time or takeaway to teach them their lesson. But really, if a child is banging a glass on a glass table and you just say, no, we don't do that, that's bad, and they keep doing it, and you look at them like they are being bad or their behavior is bad or off the mark, and you take the child and you put them over in a timeout so that they listen to you the next time that you say no, how is that actually teaching the child where to bang and what to bang on? You see, if it's inherent in their nature to bang on something in that moment because of motor skill development, curiosity of nature, which is what gives them the drive to thrive. And we're just kind of following them around, dictating and telling them no. How are they actually learning? Now, this is what's got us off the path, but this is what we've been taught. And we are only as good as what we've been taught. In 1903, the American Journal of Psychology talks about how to develop neural pathways, how to replace old unserving neural pathways with new ones, new habits that will actually serve you and serve your child when you begin to learn the how. Right now, we're not talking about that, but we're just kind of bringing some awareness to what makes a child aggressive.
You're absolutely right about that, Bonnie. And just to add a +1 is I've noticed that everybody that I've ever talked to talks about terrible twos. Almost like 99% of them. Now, a very few people that have hung around what we do start to see that they're not terrible twos. They're actually terrific twos. Now, let's take the responsibility, if we may, with zero blame. Let's set that aside for now, but let's just see, how did we get there? Now, how many times would you have to guess that a child, even though you have the best heart of hearts, they grabbed something and put it in their mouth. They started crawling/walking towards the stairs. They undid their hand from yours and started to waddle across the yard, having no idea what a street was. And through all those dramatical scenarios, we told them what? And you know it in your heart. I said no, don't. Matter of fact, you can see it across the board everywhere you go, how they smack the hand, or they smack the butt, or they touch them on their lips and say, no, we don't yell, stop. 400 to 1 is the ratio that a child is told no. And we wonder why they start to act out. We trained them to. Instead of showing them what to do, like Bonnie is so smart. When she saw show them where to go, it's almost a yes. And the child's spirit starts to grow. And this ODD thing would never have had a chance to develop because it's about guiding, not punishing.
Okay, so I'm going to close out with a little short story because, as I promised, I'm going to share one simple action that's going to help you change everything in your home environment. The one simple action is called validation. How much do you like to be validated when you're sharing something with your partner or your spouse or really anybody, your mom? Validation is key. And so when I first met Tom, and I had no idea what his past was with kids or anything like that, I remember calling Zach upstairs. It was like, Zach, it's bedtime, as nice as possible, trying to avoid the meltdown that was sure to come because I used to suffer with hours and hours long meltdowns at the end of the day. And Tom comes around the corner at that exact moment, and he goes, hey, Zach, would you like to go to bed right now with a story, or would you like to go to bed in 10 minutes from now with no story? And Zach had a chance to think about it for a moment. His desire to stay up for just a few more minutes was validated. And he got to think, and he got to answer, 10 more minutes without a story. And then Tom took it to another level where he showed him where the hand on the clock would be in 10 minutes and passed on the responsibility to him. Now, he was 6.5. He was labeled ADHD and ODD. And of course, there were other things that I just started to ignore because there was probably about 3 or 4 other labels that they were trying to put on him at this time. But he come running upstairs 10 minutes later, big smile on his face, wrapped his arms around me, said, good night, I love you, and went off to bed. And that was the first time in his whole life that he's actually gone to bed on his own, and I didn't see him again until morning. All right, so this way works. It works to empower you, empower your environment, empower your children to another level. If we said something today that affected you in some way, please do click like, comment, and share this podcast in as many places as you possibly can. Finally, if you visit our website, creatingchampionsforlife.com, you can get your own free copy of Raising Healthy, Happy, Cooperative Kids. It is a must read for all parents. It's eye-opening, it's life-changing, and it's been called the most real, relevant, and powerful information in the history of parenting. Thank you again so much for being here. We appreciate your presence, and we look forward to seeing you on our next episode of Learn to Speak Kid on iTunes.
Get over here. Because I said so. Why do I have to keep repeating myself? Mom or Dad, do you ever feel like a broken record? You're listening to Learn to Speak Kid podcast on iTunes with Bonnie and Thomas Liotta, positively transforming families one out of control child at a time.